There's something about the way a building holds grief that clings to the air like old smoke. The prison had been empty for decades, but the walls still exhaled suffering, quiet and sour. I felt it the moment I crossed the threshold, stepping over cracked tiles and chains rusted into the floor. I had come alone, daring myself to feel nothing, daring the stories of angry spirits and restless convicts to be just that, stories. But even as my boots echoed down the first corridor, something thick began to press against my ribs, slowing my breath. It was the weight of all those long-forgotten screams, soaked into concrete and iron and peeling paint, waiting for someone foolish enough to stir them again. The execution chamber was the worst. The metal chair still bolted to the center of the room, leather straps hanging limp like tongues. I didn't want to get close, but I did, drawn by something deeper than curiosity. The floor around the chair was darker than the rest, as if the blood had never dried, only sunk deep into the stone. I could almost hear the murmured final words of the condemned, whispered into a blackness so thick it might have swallowed their souls before their hearts had even stopped. And as I stood there, the air grew colder, a sharpness to it, like ice water running across bare skin. From the corner of my eye, a flicker, a shape, hunched and shivering, strapped in place. Gone when I turned, but leaving behind a high, shivering whine that echoed against the dead walls. Deeper into the prison, the lights failed completely. Only my flashlight carving out narrow, trembling tunnels through the dark. Cells gaped open like broken mouths, rusted bars slick with moisture, as if the place itself was still breathing, sweating. In one cell, a chain swung lazily back and forth, though the air was still. In another, scratch marks furrowed the stone walls, deep and frantic. I didn't dare imagine the nails that had made them. I tried to keep my steps even, but the shadows moved wrong, pooling where they shouldn't, stretching long fingers toward my ankles. Somewhere far down the corridor, a low moan began, and I knew, not thought, not guessed, knew that it was for me. Something wanted me here. Something remembered the taste of despair, the crackle of bone, the final rattle of breath, and it hungered still. I never reached the end of the corridor. My flashlight died in an instant, the darkness snapping shut like a mouth. In the pitch, something brushed my arm, dry and crackling. A whisper too soft to understand threaded into my ear, carried on breath colder than death, and I ran blindly, bruising myself on the walls, on corners, on unseen obstacles. But no matter how I moved, the corridors seemed to twist, to lead me back, over and over, past the execution chamber, past the swinging chains, past the cell with the clawed stone, until my chest burned and my legs shook and my mind frayed at the edges. Somewhere behind me, the moan grew into a chorus. Dozens, maybe hundreds of ruined voices. And I realized then that the prison had never been abandoned. It had simply been waiting. And I had given it exactly what it craved. It had been a dare, that was all. A cruel, stupid dare spoken under breathless laughter and half-drunk bravado. They said no one stayed inside the old Holloway house past midnight. They said the house didn't want company, and that if you disrespected it, it would show you what loneliness really meant. I laughed too, Because that's what you do when you're afraid, when you feel the weight of everyone's eyes daring you to be more than you are. And so I went, alone, with only a phone for light, and my heart hammering in a regular beat against my ribs. The door swung open with a groan that sounded far too much like a sigh. The house didn't breathe like a normal place. The air was thick, sluggish, damp, as if I had walked into the chest cavity of some sleeping thing. Wallpaper sloughed from the walls in long curling strips, and the floorboards dipped and groaned beneath my weight. Everywhere smelled faintly of rot and iron. I told myself it was just mildew, just time gnawing away at wood and plaster. But something older moved in the spaces between walls. Small sounds, scratches, murmurs, a slow drip that seemed to echo too loudly. I made my way through the parlor, past a toppled grandfather clock, the hands still frozen at 3:15, deeper into the house's guts, where the cold seemed to congeal. They had dared me to find the attic, the heart of the house. They said if you opened the attic door, the house would show you things. Not visions, not ghosts. Memories, as raw and bleeding as if they had never ended. The stairs to the upper floor were steep and treacherous, the banister eaten away to splinters. At the top, the hallway yawned open, lined with broken frames and overturned furniture. And at the very end, half hidden behind peeling wallpaper, the attic door waited. It didn't creak when I opened it. It simply gaped wider, as if welcoming me inside. The air was heavier there, full of dust and something sweeter, something wrong. In the dimness, something shifted, a mass of broken dolls, or bones, or something worse, twitching and breathing in slow, shuddering gasps. I don't know when the door slammed shut, only that it did. The sound like a final heartbeat. The light on my phone flickered once and died, leaving me to the blackness. And in that blackness, the house showed me, not memories of others, but fragments of myself I had buried deep. Shame, cruelty, fear, loss. Reflections distorted into monsters, pulling themselves from the floorboards, from the cracked walls, their hands wet and grasping. And I ran, or tried to. But the house had no more need for doors, for stairs, for exits. Every turn led deeper into itself, a spiral built from my own cowardice and pride. The dare had been a joke, but the house was not laughing. It only waited, patient and endless, for me to forget I had ever been outside its walls at all. They told me not to take room 217, not with words, just with the way the man at the front desk hesitated before handing me the key. Just with the way the bellboy's hands twitched when he pointed to the stairs. No warnings, no stories, just small broken movements that said enough if you were willing to hear. But I wasn't, not really. I believed in things like tired eyes and old walls, not in the kind of fear that follows you home. The key was cold in my hand, heavier than it should have been. Like it didn't want to go. Or maybe like it knew it wouldn't come back. The room smelled like nothing at all. That was the first thing. Not dust or mildew or the tired sweat of strangers. Just absence. A smell you only notice when everything else is dead. The wallpaper hung in long, sagging strips like skin. The bed sagged. The chair by the window faced the wall instead of the view. The mirror above the dresser was cracked straight through the middle, and for a long time I thought maybe it was the only honest thing left here. I locked the door behind me without meaning to. Heard the click like a breath drawn in too deep. Like something waking up sleep didn't come, not even badly. It just sat at the edges of the room and stared. The shadows moved. Not fast, just a little, just enough, stretching slow across the floor like oil. I stayed very still, listened to the walls settle, listened to the soft scrape of something too close. At 3 a.m, I felt the bed shift. A deep, slow weight, as if something climbed onto it without needing feet. The mattress dipped beside me. The blanket stretched. I didn't turn. I didn't breathe. I closed my eyes, and still I felt it. A breath against my cheek. Dry and sour and cold enough to hurt. And a whisper I couldn't make out slipping into my ear like smoke I left before the sun found me. Stumbled through the hallway that stretched longer than it should have. Lights buzzing low and slow like dying flies. The carpet wet underfoot. Mirrors bending wrong. Every reflection lagging behind me just a little. Screaming without sound, reaching without hands. I didn't take the elevator, didn't take my things, didn't take my eyes off the floor until I hit the street, and even then I didn't stop. Not really. The city was a blur, the sky a bruise, and somewhere behind me the hotel waited, still breathing, still hungry. Still knowing that I had opened something that wasn't meant to be touched. And some nights when the dark settles too deep and the silence hums against my teeth, I can feel it again. The mattress dipping, the breath finding my ear, the voice beginning to whisper. And the awful part is, some small broken piece of me listens. There was something about the way the house leaned into itself, as if it had grown tired of standing, tired of holding in all the air and silence it had gathered over the years. The porch sagged. The windows were thick with grime that turned the world outside into a smear of gray and green, and the door yielded under my hand without a sound, as if it had been waiting too long for someone to open it again inside. The light was a muted thing, heavy and slow, falling through broken slats and pooling in places where the floor dipped and cracked. There was a smell too, soft and crumbling, like pages left to rot at the bottom of a forgotten trunk. I moved carefully, not because I was afraid, but because the house seemed to need it, seemed to ask for a certain kind of gentleness, the way you would touch the hand of someone half asleep. The hollow room was at the center, a space stripped bare of anything but the echo of footsteps, and even those faded too quickly to feel real. I stood there for a long time, listening, breathing in the slow dust of it, feeling the way the walls exhaled around me. There were no pictures, no furniture, no stains on the floor, just emptiness that felt a little too dense, as if it remembered what had once filled it and couldn't quite let go. My fingers brushed the wall without thinking, tracing a line where the wallpaper had peeled away. The pattern was almost gone, faded into the pale memory of flowers or vines or something else that had once seemed important. I closed my eyes and imagined the room as it had been, full of voices, full of life, laughter caught in the beams, footsteps chasing themselves in the fading afternoon light. And it was strange how easy it was to believe it, how easy it was to feel it settle over my skin, like the weight of an old coat somewhere deeper in the house. A door shifted, a slow creak that wasn't quite a sound, but more a suggestion of one. I didn't move. There was no need. Whatever lived here now wasn't angry, wasn't hungry. It was just lonely, just patient. The air grew colder, but not sharply, not cruelly. just enough to remind me that the house was watching, that it had always been watching, even when no one had stood inside it for years. I sat down in the middle of the room, cross-legged like a child waiting for a story, and the floor moaned quietly under my weight. I placed my hands flat against the wood and breathed slow and deep, letting the quiet fold over me. For a while there was only the sound of my heartbeat, slow and uncertain, and the distant whisper of the house settling its bones. I don't know how long I stayed there. Time felt thinner inside those walls, stretching out and folding back in on itself. Outside the windows, the sky grew darker, but no stars appeared. Just a deepening of the gray until the world beyond the house seemed to vanish altogether. And in that dimness, the room around me seemed to remember itself. Faint impressions on the floor where furniture had once stood. The ghost of a rug worn thin under countless footsteps. A corner where a rocking chair might have swayed gently in the long, slow evenings. I thought maybe if I stayed still long enough, the house would speak. Not in words, but in a sigh of wood, a hush of settling dust, a cool brush of air against my face. I thought maybe it would tell me what it was waiting for, what it was holding on to, why it had chosen to lean into itself instead of simply falling. But the house said nothing. It only breathed with me, slow and deep, and the longer I stayed, the less I wanted to leave. When I finally rose to my feet, the floor creaked louder, a small protest I could almost understand. I walked back the way I had come, careful again, as if stepping through someone else's dream. The door swung open easily and the night poured in, thick and formless, swallowing the last edges of the light. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The hollow room would still be there, breathing softly, waiting patiently, dreaming its slow, crumbling dreams, long after my footsteps faded into the mist.